Hello everyone, this is Rahul Rathod. Welcome back to my another video. In this video, we will be discussing about silent letter H. In our last video, we discussed about the silent letter G. If you did not watch that previous video, go back to that video and watch that video. So without wasting your time, let's begin the class. As I have told you that we will be discussing about silent letter H, which means letter H is written in a word but there is no sound of the letter H. Letter H is written in a word that must be written in a particular word, but there is no sound, which means the letter H should not be pronounced in particular word. So we have a few rules regarding the silent letter H. The first rule of the letter H as a silent says that letter H is silent. The letter H is silent when it comes after W. Letter H is silent when it comes after W, which means here letter H is silent letter when it comes the after the W. When it comes after the W, in this case letter H is a silent letter here. Fine. So now I have a few examples on the first rule. The first word here says we never pronounce this what. There is no H sound, which means H is a silent letter. So we should pronounce this as what, keeping the letter H silent, and the next word should be pronounced as the where. Don't use the letter H sound. Letter H is silent because it is after this W. In this case, letter H is not pronounced. This word should be pronounced as the where. This is why. This is when. And next word, it is pronounced as the wine. This is wine. And which. Letter A is silent, and here it is pronounced as the wine. Fine. So in these words, letter H after the W. Letter H after the W is silent. There is no sound. But the letter was written, but there was no sound. There was no sound of the letter. Fine. So this is the first rule, and in the first rule we have exceptions. The exceptions are most important. Exception, which means the exception doesn't come under the rule. That is called exception, which doesn't follow any rule. The first word in the exception, that is whose. Though the letter H, we discussed that when the letter H comes after W, it is silent, but exception doesn't follow any rule. The H is not a silent letter. It has sound. We pronounce this as whose. Instead of keeping the letter H silent, the word must be pronounced as whose using the H. Now again, the letter H is not silent. That must be pronounced without keeping the letter H silent and without following the rule 1, because it is exceptions. Fine. So it is who, this is whoever, and this is nothing but whole. So this is the first rule of the letter H. So I hope you understood. We discussed the rule number 1, and now the rule number 2. In the rule number 2, you don't say it after, which means letter H is not pronounced after the G and the R. See, very simple. I will make it clear. Do not worry. Letter H is a silent letter. Letter H is a silent letter before G and R, which means after R and G it is a silent letter, and before this G and R it is a silent letter. Both same, vice versa. Do not worry. Letter H is not pronounced after this G and the R. So examples for this, the first word is there. In the first word, we don't pronounce here H. H is a silent letter. Why? Because it is after the G. So in this case, the word should be pronounced like ghost instead of using the letter H sound. This is ghost and this is nothing but ghastly. What? Ghastly. And this third one is nothing but ghetto. And the fourth one is nothing but aghast, because there is no sound of the H, because it is after the G. After the G, when there is of H after the G, there is no sound. And this word should be pronounced as this. This word must be pronounced as rhyme. Rhyme. And this word should be pronounced as, this word should be pronounced as rhino. And this is nothing but rhythm. This is rubab. Rubab. Here the R is also silent and the H is also silent. That is rubab. I repeat the pronunciation of this word: ghost, ghastly, ghetto, aghast, rhyme, rhino, rhythm, rubab. So this is the rule number 2 of silent letter H. I hope you understood. Please make notes. I'll come up with rule number 3. We discussed about the rule number 2 and now we have rule number 3. In the rule number 3, we are discussing about the silent letter S, where it is written but there should not be any sound of the letter H. Fine. So now rule number 3 says that letter H is sometimes silent. Letter H is sometimes silent when it is placed after C. When it is placed after C. See, very simple. Letter H is a silent letter when it is placed after C. In this case, letter H is a silent. So now examples if we see, in the first word letter H is a silent letter. Why? Because it is after this C. It is after this C. So in this case, this word must be pronounced as anchor. And the second word, this must be pronounced as character. What? Character. Yes, is a silent letter. Sorry, H is a silent letter. And in the next word, it is pronounced, this word has the sound like characteristic. And in the this word is pronounced as the, just a minute. This word must be pronounced as the echo. What? Echo. There is no sound of the letter H. You know why? Because it is after the H, after the C. In the same way, similarly, we don't pronounce this here. This is nothing but, sorry, in this case we don't pronounce the letter again H because it is after the C. So the word sounds like scheme. The word sounds like scheme. And the next word sounds like the, school. There is no sound of the letter H. Here we pronounce this as tech, psychology, and here it is nothing but Christian. Here it is nothing but Christmas. So now I repeat the pronunciation of these words. The first word is anchor, character, characteristic, echo, scheme, school, tech, psychology, Christian, and Christmas. Here we have exceptions along with the rule number 1. Those exceptions which does not come under the category of the rule is called the exception. So now in the exception, just we have discussed that letter H is a silent when it is followed by the letter C. But though the rule is here, but still it is not a silent letter. We should pronounce this as the chart. Fine. So the next word, letter S, is not a silent letter. That must be pronounced because it is in the category of the exceptions. This is chapter, charge and change. So these exceptions which has the sound of the H, and but this rule doesn't have the sound of the H. I hope you guys have understood the topic, rule number 3. So note it down. I'll come up with rule number 4. We discussed rule number 3 of silent letter H. Now we have rule number 4, where the letter H is not pronounced, but it is written. Sometimes letter H is not pronounced at the beginning of many words, which means when many words begins with H, the H does not have sound. The H does not have sound. No sound. Fine. What are those examples? The first word which is here, this word begins with the silent. This word begins with letter H, which is silent, because rule says that many letter H is silent or it is not pronounced at the beginning of many words. Fine. In this way, keeping the rule in mind, this should not be pronounced, and after keeping the letter H as a silent, the word should be pronounced as or. Fine. Again I repeat, or. And there is 50% sound of the letter I. It is for this or. And the next word should be pronounced as honest. There is no sound of the letter H, it is silent letter. This must be pronounced as the honest. And it is A. It is just A. Fine. So in these words, letter H does not have any sound because these words are started with what? H. So in the same way, the rule number 4 has exceptions. Exceptions, which means which does not come under the category of any rule when we study. Fine. So just we studied that when any word or many words starts with letter H, there should not be sound of the letter H. But in exceptions, see, there is a word called the history. History word, this word starts with the letter H, but still the letter H has the sound. It has the sound. This is called the exception. History, happy, handsome. And we discussed about the where the D is not pronounced but it is written. D is also a silent letter and the H is also a silent letter. So we H is not a silent letter, only D is a silent letter because it is in the exception. This is handsome and this is happy and history. This is what the rule number 4 of the silent letter H. I hope you guys must have understood the rule 1, 2, 3, 4 and their exceptions. So this is the today's video of the letter H as a silent. So I hope everybody must have understood the topic. If you have any queries related to this video, feel free to ask us in the comment section. And if you haven't subscribed our channel, do subscribe our channel and press the bell icon for more updates. By that time, thank you so much for watching our video. Take care. Keep learning with Learn to Teach.